Hello Internet, and welcome to another video in my OOREP introduction video series. Today we're going to talk about some of the more advanced or not so obvious features to do with repertorisation that we didn't look at in the last video, where I gave you more of an overview how repertorisation search works. So to kick off, let's think of a situation where you're sort of not sure where to start or what to look up exactly, or where you've already tried something and you can't find the right rubric. Or think of a situation where you can't find the matching rubrics, but the general tendency of the condition is kind of obvious. So you see what's going on, but you don't really know how to put it down into the search box. You can't really find what you're looking for. And in such situations, it can be sometimes very useful to try and find out which remedies have a general affinity towards something, an affinity towards a condition. For example, which remedies are generally affecting the glands or glandular conditions, or which remedies are particularly right-sided or left-sided remedies. Even if you can't find exactly what you're looking for, or you have to make a choice, a decision at the end of a repertorisation what to go for, then you might sometimes look at which remedies lend themselves particularly well to which underlying direction and symptoms. And to find out such affinities, you can, for instance, simply type gland star in here. That will make sure we're finding glands, we're finding glandular swellings, we're finding the gland, and so on. We spoke about the use of wildcard in the last video, so let's just type gland to make sure we're getting all the gland rubrics that are in this repertory, and press find. And we find 342 rubrics. And what you can now do is you move the mouse to the right corner here, you click this arrow here, and open pops this gray box, which I've called the multi-occurrences remedies box. It shows you all the remedy abbreviations that match more than once in this search. So all these remedies that you see here appear somewhere in the resulting rubrics more than once. And for instance, here, the first one is silica appears 91 times. With a total score of 195. Mercury appears 87 times with a total score of 171, and so on. So it's probably fair to say that silica and mercury are both very big glandular remedies. And then, of course, you can also click on these, but I show you that in a minute. So the first thing I want you to just remember is you can just open here this gray box. You can also create a bit more space again by closing it. The results will still be there, and then get this general affinity. The other example I gave was, for instance, a very right-sided remedy. So we are entering right star again for the same reasons as before, so we get as much as possible. And you see you have 1,400, more than 1,400 rubrics matching right. And of course, there's all sorts of uses of the word right here. When turning to the right side, for instance, or you have lying on the right side aggravates or something. But by and large, you get a tendency. So a tendency, for instance, lycopodium, 153 occurrences of lycopodium in the results with a total score of 275. So it's possibly fair to say that lycopodium is predominantly a right-sided remedy. And this can be very useful if you just want to also find out which remedies are similar, which have a certain base affinity to something. So here, click in the right corner on this little arrow and open the multi-result section. Of course, if you click on this now, let's say you click on this lycopodium now, then you get only those 153 rubrics that match right. So every single rubric now here contains lycopodium. Right? So this is the first takeaway message. Use this gray box here, this gray bar, and look at the multi-occurrences remedies, especially useful for getting affinities and general directions of remedies. Okay. related to that somewhat is the advanced tab here, or when you press in this cogwheel, you get these additional search options here. And what you can do is, we stay with our example, the right-sidedness. You can enter a remedy here, for instance, Lycopodium. You can use the abbreviation or the full name. It just has to be unique, otherwise the OOREP will complain that it can't find remedy. But you could use silica or something, and you could say, I just want the glandular symptoms of silica, and let's press start, so we get 91 glandular rubrics that contain silica, all here. And what you can do is you get, for instance, also, let's have a look. You get some that are maybe not so interesting to you. They all match pretty high with silica. But also here, for instance, you see silica is only one valued, and maybe this is not such an important rubric, and maybe there are other ones like that, like here where silica is only one valued, or here where silicon is not a very strong contender to be the remedy that you're after. So what you can do is you can say, I don't only want to look for glandular silica, I want that also where silica is at least 2 valued. So you click on the 2, and then you have only 70 rubrics, or you can click on 3 where it's 3 valued, where it's a really strong indication. 3 valued is the highest in the Kent. Oops, that's the 3 valued ones without the glandular swellings. Sorry, we put them back on. It's of course 1500. We say gland, 3 valued. And that leaves us with 34, right? So here you can combine when you open this cogwheel button here you can combine the search for remedies and symptoms. So silica glandular 3 valued was about, what was it, 30? And of course, if you enter nothing up here, you just say silica and say you want everything from, well, Kent only goes from 1 to 3, say from one to upwards. Then you basically get all the rubrics, in this case in the Publicum, or rather Kent repertory, to do with silica, which is 7,830 rubrics. Yeah. Good, so this is the second takeaway message. The first one was make use of the multi-occurrences box here. Of course, this is now a very large box. The second one is make use of the additional search options if you want to look specifically for a combination of a remedy and the symptoms. So the next thing I want to show you is related to the repertorisation dialog itself. For that purpose, let's just build up a little case here. Let's just use our example from the previous video, mouth bitter taste, for instance. Here's a nice medium or big size rubric. Then let's have some acute symptom. Say the head pain, we've used it before as well. Cutting temples left, it's a smaller rubric. Let's use some modalities, for instance, amelioration in the warmth, a very common one. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a very fitting rubric. I just want to give you the idea of it. Then let's use something peculiar about a person. For instance, the watery eyes when there's a draft or a cold wind. So we have eye lacrimation in cold air. Let's use this one and throw in a mind symptom. For instance, anxiety at bedtime or something. Mind anxiety evening bed. This is a good one. Maybe throw in another modality, for instance, I don't know, milk aggravation. Generalities, food, milk aggravates, also a bigger rubric, nice. Okay, so if we scroll down to our case now, then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rubrics. It's a nice smallish size case. And if we click on repertorize, then we see that arsenicum comes out first. If we leave the mouse hovering over the abbreviation name, then the full name appears. That's sometimes very useful, especially for the more obscure and seldom used remedies. And maybe if we recognize, maybe it's clear we want to give arsenicum, or maybe sepia and pulsatilla, for instance, are also very strong contenders for a remedy, and we have to do a little bit more research. And one of the first things you may want to do is you may want to give different weights to the rubrics that you've chosen. For instance, the watery eyes and the cold air might be important or very important, so 2 or 3 valued compared to the others. And if you give this a higher score now or higher valuation, then you see that pulsatilla comes out with a distance of 2 to the next contender as the most likely remedy. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is these 3 links up here. So when you click on them, then what happens is you have a sortum here according to this column. If you click on it again, then the 3 is at the bottom. If you click on it again, it's at the top. So the clicking just toggles between ascending and descending sort. Or you sort alphabetically according to the rubric or whatever you find easiest to handle your case. Another thing where this sorting, however, really shines, or another feature that's there where the sorting is especially useful, is these labels. And I think these labels are probably the one thing I'm getting most frequently asked about, what they're actually good for. And the simple answer is OOREP doesn't really do anything with them at all, and yet they can be a very useful feature because it depends entirely on you what you want to use them for. So if you repertorize this case, for instance, and we've built it up in that sense, I guess, according to Kent-Künzli method, where you differentiate between the mild symptoms, the modalities, the general symptoms, the acute symptoms, the peculiarities, and so on, then you want to group your rubrics according to those classifications, and the grouping works by labels. You can just attach any labels to it. For instance, you can have a modality here and give this the label M. You can have a peculiarity and give it the label P, for instance. It's entirely up to you, though. You have the generalities, give it a G. Then you have the acute symptom, give it an A. And the mild symptom, well, M is taken for modalities. So let's say it's a bit of a stretch, but let's say it's the brain symptom. It comes from the head, or a head symptom. We could give it an H. And let's say we have here something which is maybe also an acute symptom. I guess it's not always entirely clear-cut whether something is a general symptom or an acute symptom, but I hope you get the idea. And now if you click on repertorize again, you see that there's a new column here, which wasn't there before, the L column, the label column. And now if you click on L, it sorts them by the label. So in this case, we only have 2 of the same category. That means 2 acute symptoms. But we may as well have put another peculiar symptoms in there, for instance, which what would be another peculiar symptoms? For instance, the fear of dogs, for instance. So enter fear star dog star and see what happens. Yes, one rubric. Let's enter this and give it a label P for peculiar. Let's repertorize again. Let's sort by the different categories. So I've got 2 acute symptoms, 2 peculiar symptoms, and of course, depending on which school of homeopathy you follow now, you may now decide that you want only at those that cover, for instance, all the acute symptoms, which in this case here is Barita carbonica, very late, or you want to say that you want in all cases you want the peculiar symptoms all covered. Unfortunately, I've chosen the case in such a way that I don't think there's any remedy here that does it, but I hope you get the idea. And this is very useful because up here you have a choice between different repertories, and these repertories often follow different philosophies. So the author of these repertories has different intentions on how they are used. For instance, in the Bönninghausen method, you use the main symptoms and the sub-symptoms and the modalities. So you have different categories than Kent. And for instance, in the synoptic key with Boger, you only go for the most striking features, and you often have a case when you just have 1 or 2 or 3 rubrics, unlike in Kent, where you have a big selection of various different categories of rubrics. And these books are all written with different repertorisation ideas in mind. And the best way that they're reflected and that they can be used in OOREP is if you just create the labels according to whatever philosophy you follow, to whatever repertory you choose. And then when you click on repertorize, you can sort here and lay out your case in a way that lends itself well to this particular repertory that you have chosen. And finally, just for completeness sake, you may have figured it out yourself by now anyway. What can be very useful is if you use these weights here in order to temporarily discard a certain rubric. Say, for instance, you've added, especially from another repertory, say, using the Bönninghausen here again, we say pain, gums, or whatever, and there is a rubric that for some reason that is not important now, we needed to add, we couldn't find in the repertory we're working with, then we resort to another one and we repertorize, say, we're sorting here. And if we want to see the case without that rubric, then we can just put it to ignore here, repertorize again, and it doesn't show up without deleting it here with the minus symbol. And this is sometimes very useful because you can try different things and you don't have to look up stuff again, find stuff again, and it saves you a lot of time, hopefully, this feature. So it's not just to value something higher, it's also to temporarily ignore it. Right. And I guess with this little overview, I'll leave it at that and hopefully see you in the next video. Bye-bye.